Warning, viewer discretion is advised. As we know, Theodore Robert Bundy, aka Ted Bundy, was an American serial killer who kidnapped, raped, and murdered numerous young women during the 1970s. Although a number of women and girls survived his vicious attacks, and he has been suspected of several more killings, we will give a chronological list of murders strongly believed with a degree of certainty to have been committed by Bundy. We will then visit his final capture location in Pensacola, Florida. Linda Ann Huey is documented as Ted Bundy's first murder victim. In 1974, Linda Ann Huey was a 21-year-old University of Washington psychology major. She lived in an off-campus house in Seattle, Washington, with roommates. Linda's bedroom was in the basement section of the house, located at 5517 12th Street Northeast, Seattle. Sometime between the late-night hours of January 31st, 1974 and February 1st, 1974, Ted Bundy entered the residence through an unlocked back door. Linda was bludgeoned by Bundy while she slept and was abducted from the residence. Linda's skull was later found at Taylor Mountain, southeast of Seattle, in 1975. 19-year-old Donna Gail Manson vanished from Evergreen State Campus in Olympia, Washington on March 12, 1974, around 7 p.m. when she was on her way to a jazz concert at the library. Her body has never been located. Ted Bundy confessed to Donna's murder before his 1989 execution. In 1974, Susan Elaine Rancourt was an 18-year-old student at what is now Central Washington State University in Ellensburg, Washington, studying biology. On April 17, 1974, Susan was reported missing when she did not return to her dorm. Less than a year later, 4 skulls were located on Taylor Mountain, Washington. One was identified as Susan. Ted Bundy confessed to Susan's murder while awaiting execution. Roberta Kathleen Parks, known as Kathy Parks to her friends, was in 1974 a 20-year-old student at Oregon State University in Corvallis, Oregon. On May 6, 1974, Parks left her dorm room and was never seen alive again. According to reports, Ted Bundy lured Parks from the cafeteria, put her in his car, drove to an unknown location, and raped her. It is alleged Bundy then drove Parks to Taylor Mountain, Washington, raped her again, and bludgeoned her to death. Her remains were located in 1975. Brenda Carroll Ball was a 22-year-old woman who, in 1974, resided in Buren, Washington. On the night of May 31st, 1974, Brenda went to the Flame Tavern, a neighborhood bar. Brenda was last seen speaking to a man in a sling in the parking lot of the location in the early morning hours of June 1st. Brenda was never seen alive again. Her skull was found in Taylor Mountain, Washington in March of 1975. Ted Bundy later confessed to her murder. Ann Hawkins was an 18-year-old college student from Tacoma, Washington, who disappeared from an alley behind her sorority house at the University of Washington at Seattle on June 11, 1974. It is believed Hawkins was lured away, knocked unconscious, kidnapped, and later murdered. Serial killer Ted Bundy confessed to Hawkins' abduction and murder shortly before his execution. Bundy advised Hawkins' skeletal remains were discovered by authorities in the mountains of Washington in 1975, although they were never officially identified. 23-year-old Janice Ann Ott and 19-year-old Denise Marie Naslund both went missing from Lake Sammamish State Park, Washington, on July 14, 1974. There was only a 4-hour gap between Ott's disappearance and Naslund's. They are now known to have both been victims of serial killer Ted Bundy. It is thought that Ott was lured away by Bundy, and Naslund disappeared after she walked alone to the restroom. Skeletal remains of both women were found 2 months later on Taylor Mountain, Washington. 16-year-old Nancy Wilcox was last seen riding in a yellow Volkswagen Bug near her home on Arnett Drive in Holiday, Utah on October 2, 1974. She went out to buy a pack of gum and has never been heard from again. Nancy is believed to have been a victim of Ted Bundy. Bundy stated Wilcox was never in his car. However, he confessed that he abducted her at knife point, sexually assaulted her in a nearby orchard, and strangled her. He said he buried her body near Capitol Reef National Park, over 200 miles from the site of her disappearance. Her body has never been found. 17-year-old Melissa Ann Smith of Midvale, Utah, was the daughter of a police chief. On October 18, 1974, Melissa left a pizza parlor where she had been visiting with friends, but she would never make it home. Her body was found October 27, 1974 in Summit Park. She had been strangled. Ted Bundy confessed to her murder before his execution. 17-year-old Laura Ann Amy disappeared on October 31, 1974, as she was on her way home from a Halloween party. Her body was found a month later in American Fork Canyon, Utah. Ted Bundy confessed to her murder shortly before his execution. It is believed that Bundy picked up Laura in Lehigh as she left a cafe just after midnight. She was discovered on Thanksgiving Day 9 miles away. She had been beaten, raped, and strangled. 17-year-old Deborah Jean Kent disappeared from the parking lot of Viewmont High School in her hometown of Bountiful, Utah, during the evening of November 8, 1974. She vanished after leaving a school play. Minimal skeletal remains were later found near Fairview, Utah, which were later positively identified as belonging to Deborah. Authorities determined she was a victim of serial killer Ted Bundy, who confessed to her murder before his 1989 execution. 23-year-old Karen Ellen Campbell disappeared from the Wildwood Inn in Snowmass Village, Colorado on January 12, 1975, while on vacation with her boyfriend. Her body was found 36 days later in a nearby snowbank. She had been stabbed, bludgeoned, and raped. Ted Bundy confessed to her murder shortly before his execution. 26-year-old Julie Cunningham was last seen in Vail, Colorado on March 15, 1975. She disappeared early in the evening after she left her apartment in the Apollo Park neighborhood to visit a local tavern. Although never charged in her case, Ted Bundy confessed to Julie's murder. Bundy stated that he lured her into his vehicle by posing as an injured skier on crutches. He claims he knocked her unconscious, drove her to a remote area about 80 miles west of Vail, and raped her. He states he strangled her and then disposed of her body in a shallow grave near Rifle, Colorado. Her body was never found. 25-year-old Denise Lynn Oliverson was last seen on April 6, 1975, after she left her Grand Junction, Colorado home on her bicycle. The next day, searchers found her bicycle and sandals under a viaduct near the railroad bridge close to the Colorado River on U.S. Route 50. Ted Bundy confessed to Oliverson's murder shortly before his execution. He stated he abducted her, killed her in his car near the Utah state line, and dumped her body into the Colorado River. She was never located. 12-year-old Lynette Don Culver was last seen in Pocatello, Idaho on May 6, 1975. She left Alameda Junior High School for her lunch break and never returned. Ted Bundy confessed to Lynette's murder shortly before his execution. He claimed he abducted Lynette, took her to a room at the Holiday Inn, where he raped her, drowned her in the bathtub, and dumped her body into the Snake River. She has never been found. Although Bundy reportedly provided personal details about Lynette's life, authorities have not entirely accepted his statement, due to 4 other similar cases in the area that Bundy could not have been responsible for. 15-year-old Susan Curtis is from Bountiful, Utah. She was attending the Bountiful Orchard Youth Conference at Brigham Young University in Provo, Utah, when she disappeared on June 27, 1975. Ted Bundy confessed to Susan's murder before his execution. He stated he buried her body along a highway near Price, Utah. Susan has never been found. Ted Bundy broke into the Chi Omega sorority house near Florida State University in Tallahassee around 3 a.m. on January 15, 1978. Bundy, who escaped from a Colorado jail cell 2 weeks before, went on a violent rampage. He fatally attacked 21-year-old Margaret Elizabeth Bauman and 20-year-old Lisa Levy while they slept, bludgeoning them with firewood and strangling them with stockings, according to reports. Bundy went on to brutally attack 3 other women, who all survived as the night went on. On February 9, 1978, Ted Bundy abducted and murdered his youngest and final victim, 12-year-old Kimberly Leach, from Lake City Junior High School in Florida. It is believed Bundy cut her throat with a hunting knife he purchased the day before in Jacksonville. Her remains were later found near Suwannee River State Park, 43 miles west of Lake City. On February 12, 1978, with insufficient cash to pay his overdue rent and a growing suspicion that police were closing in on him, Ted Bundy stole a car and fled the Tallahassee area, driving westward across the Florida Panhandle. 3 days later, at about 1 o'clock a.m., he was stopped by Pensacola police officer David Lee after a wants and warrant check showed his Volkswagen Beetle was stolen. When told he was under arrest, Bundy began to physically resist the officer, who subsequently overpowered Bundy, taking him into custody. Bundy never experienced freedom again. Okay, here we are in Pensacola, Florida at 2805 West Cervantes Street. The business is currently the Taste of Jerusalem. Now, this business used to be called Oscar Warner's Restaurant, and it is the last place that serial killer Ted Bundy had any freedom. He was stopped by an officer on a traffic stop over here on February 15th, 1978, in the early morning hours. Ted Bundy had been in a stolen VW Bug, and he had traveled this way from Tallahassee. He was apparently parked in the stolen VW Bug in this parking lot here, which looked suspicious to the patrol officer. The patrol officer ran a records check on the license plate of the vehicle, which turned out that, it was stolen. And I believe the officer conducted a traffic stop on Ted Bundy somewhere near Cervantes Street and North W Street, which is just to the west of our location here. Here is the intersection of Cervantes and North W. Ted Bundy pulled over and was contacted by the police officer, to which a fight ensued, and the officer overcame Ted Bundy's resistance, and he went to jail, as he should have. Walking back towards the old Oscar's restaurant, some reports say that Ted Bundy actually had his last meal here, but I don't know if that's even true. Businesses at this building used to celebrate the fact that Ted Bundy was actually caught here. At one time, there was a mural painted on the side of the building here that showed Ted Bundy and his booking photo and whatnot. Kind of a weird claim to fame, but hey, it's definitely historic. Some reports say that the officer spotted the vehicle either in the parking lot or the rear of the building here. I don't know which one, but we're going to walk around and see what we can see. Here we are at the rear of the building. Bundy very well could have been parked back here. Here we are on the east side of the business here. Yep, February 15th, 1978 is when it all went down at about 1 o'clock in the morning. This building has changed hands several times since that date. Taste of Jerusalem. I suppose they have Israel-type cuisine here. There's the building from across the street.